Welcome to my orbit. This is the Orbit podcast with me. And I will have different versions of my orbit. One of my orbits is the vital orbit, which is going to be talking about my experience with an autoimmune disease, a chronic illness, and the healthcare system. In the early days, it was absolutely horrifying, and I'll make separate podcasts about how to navigate the early days, how to look for diagnosis, what to do after diagnosis. But for this series of episodes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read some stories that were given to me by other Wegener's patients. So my disease used to be called Wegener's Granulomatosis. It was a hard one to wrap my head around when I first got diagnosed. But now it's been changed to granulomatosis with polyangiitis. That's a mouthful, right? Anyways, so when I first got diagnosed, I discovered a forum that quite literally saved my life. And I am the kind of person who always wants to mutate something horrible into something positive. So I had early on in my disease process, had asked a bunch of the other patients on the forum if they would be willing to submit their stories, and I had asked a series of questions so that we could all kind of have a similar story and do an anthology of it. Well, they submitted their stories, and the anthology never happened because, disease flares and the sporadic fight to stay alive kind of got in the way. I'm, in hindsight, glad that it didn't happen because I get to do it this way. And I think this will be way more helpful. It'll reach way more people than a little Wegener's anthology book in 2012 would have reached. So I will do a series of stories to honor the bravery of the Wegener's patients who were willing to share their stories to be helpful to other newly diagnosed patients, and to follow through with my initial objective to put it out there into the world. Because when I got diagnosed, I don't know how it is now, but when I got diagnosed in 2010, there was very, very little out there, very little. And in fact, when I finally got my diagnosis, the young doctor that was actually the one responsible for me getting my diagnosis, different podcast, I will definitely talk about that. He brought me a little printout that he got off the internet about Wegener's, and it was just kind of horrific. It's not as dire as it was made out to be in 2010. And I know more people that have died from it than I know people have died from any other disease. But that's also because I was hanging out in a community of Wegener's patients, so it's inevitable. And the thing that kills you most before diagnosis is the disease, and the thing that kills you most after diagnosis is improper treatment protocol. And it's not a malicious thing, it's just a lack of awareness thing. You land in some doctor's office that has never dealt with Wegener's before. They're experimenting on you for the first time, so things can go awry. I have some stories on that too, which we'll talk about later. But now, I will actually start my series of Wegener stories with Jack. I don't think Jack is Jack's real name, but that's what he went by on the forum. And when I joined the forum, at first I was a bit of a creeper. It's actually Wegener's Granulomatosis, I think, .com, and it's a beautiful forum with wonderful people who are all there to help and support each other. And I don't think I would be where I am today if it wasn't for that forum. And Andrew is the guy from Australia who started the forum, and he's amazing. And in his own right, he has helped thousands and thousands of people get through this crazy process. But Jack was the first one to reach out to me when I first got onto the forum. And he was so kind and compassionate and wise, and he would say so much with so little. And he was actually, I think, the first one to submit his story to me, which was super cool. Jack passed from the disease a bunch of years ago, and I think it was a massive, tragic loss for the forum and for anybody else who knew him. I never met the guy. I think I saw one picture of him once. He put it on and then took it off, so I have a vague idea of what he might have looked like, but I feel so close to that man, and I never actually met him. Don't know what he looks like, and he was such an amazing soul. So I will start this Weggie story series with his story, if you don't mind. So here's Jack. Rest in peace, Jack. He'll always be in my heart. So this is in Jack's own words. All of these stories are submitted in the words of the authors / patients of Wegeners, and so I will read it exactly verbatim as they wrote it. So Jack. Diagnosed, 1988. First symptoms, 1986. 32 years old at diagnosis. Living in Birmingham, England when diagnosed. Areas affected: sinuses, hand, knee, and hip joints. Skin on hands and eyes. Live in Birmingham. Attend Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Birmingham. I was born and grew up in a small market town in the middle of England where I went to the local grammar school. I had a happy home life with my parents and older sisters and brother, and also met the girl who I was later to marry. I then moved to the area of Coventry and Birmingham, where I went to college and started work as an engineer in the motor manufacturing industry. My girlfriend moved in with me, and shortly afterwards we bought a house and were married. I was getting along very well at work and was given a job that involved working by the coast in southern Italy, performing high-speed tests on cars in the local test track. I had my immunization shots, and off I went. The work was good, fun, and my free time was spent swimming in the bay and relaxing in the local cafes, all expenses paid. It was not until my last day that I woke up in the night with a splitting headache and started to wonder what I drank to have such an effect. But it did not get any better, and the trip home was not good. The headache and sinus pain became increasingly worse until I could no longer sleep. I was being treated with antibiotics, with no improvement, and soon began a series of minor surgeries to flush my sinus cavities. This culminated in a more major operation called a bilateral Caldwell loop, after which things seemed to improve to a tolerable level. During this time, I also began to suffer from a variety of skin problems, joint pain, bloodshot eyes, but these symptoms subsided too. Around a year later, it all went horribly wrong again, with the return of all symptoms at an elevated level. I was immediately readmitted to the ENT ward, but they were at a loss as to what was wrong with me. I stayed on the ward for 2 weeks, slowly getting worse, while they wondered what to do with me. By this time, I could hardly walk. It was only then that a locum doctor said that he thought he knew what the problem was because he had just read an article in a journal describing similar symptoms. Tests were made, and it was discovered that I probably had Wegener's granulomatosis. But I was also in an advanced state of renal failure and general organ shutdown problems. They immediately transferred me to rheumatology department of the city's teaching hospital, where they ran a vasculitis research unit, and I was finally diagnosed and began to receive treatment. Because of my advanced state of decline, they hit the disease hard with high doses of cyclophosphamide, prednisolone, I think that's prednisone in our neck of the woods, and several rounds of plasmapheresis. Within days, I was feeling fine again, but this was an illusion brought on by the steroids, and I remained in hospital for another couple of months while they stabilized my kidney function and reduced the medication to a more sustainable level. I then returned home, but was a frequent visitor to the hospital due to flare-ups of Wegener's, decline of the remaining kidney function, and moving on to dialysis. The final step on the road was when I received a renal transplant from a cadaver donor. This was the best gift that anyone could ever give and marked the start of my new life in remission. This was around 5 years after the start of the problems, and it had been a very difficult time in many ways. The next 15 years were spent in a condition nearing normality, or at least nothing too bad to cope with. I had some bad times when my wife left me and when minor setbacks had me seeking medical attention, but some good times when my wife returned and we started our family of 2 daughters. One by adoption and one with the help of AI. Work was going well, and I put some effort into building a pension and getting my financial commitments to a minimum. I could see that the good times were not going to last forever, since each problem sent me back just a little bit more. Most of these were due to drug side effects, but others, such as lung involvement, were probably Wegener's related. Eventually, the accumulation of medical condition forced me to take early retirement from work, but I considered that I had done well to make it this far. The last 5 years have not been so kind to my body. Long-term use of steroids has resulted in muscle atrophy and osteoporosis. I have become malnourished due to my problems with my digestive system and with swallowing. Multiple fractures and tendon problems have almost stopped me from walking more than a few steps, but life goes on, presenting problems to be solved, and keeps me from being bored. The transplanted kidney is doing fine, and I can still think straight. I can see that many of these pressures associated with modern life are not that important, and I enjoy bringing up my family and watching them make their way in the world. The description of good days and bad days fits my current condition. On good days, my spirits are raised, and I think I'm making progress towards something more like a normal life again. On bad days, I seriously start to wonder if this is how it ends. In my own case, continuing to take drugs at quite high doses has been unavoidable. I need them to maintain my transplant, and also my Wegener's is quite aggressive and seems to want to come back as soon as I back off my protection. Every case is very different, and for most, this will not be the case, and drug-free remission will be a realistic prospect, even if it may be broken by periods of relapse. Knowledge of the disease and drugs to treat it are also slowly improving, although they may never get the sort of attention devoted to cancer. However, there is still a great deal of ignorance of the disease and its treatment amongst many doctors. I was lucky enough to be seen immediately at a center specializing in vasculitis research, especially involving renal problems. I could not have found a better place to be treated. I am sure that many of the problems with treatment and even deaths are due to poor standards of treatment and lack of experience on the part of the doctor in charge. That's Jack. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for listening. Jack is with me. He's actually the one who introduced me to the gorillas. And I think of him every time I hear a few certain songs that were my first gorilla songs. And this was in 2011, so I'm way ahead of you guys. Thanks to Jack. A toast, non-alcoholic toast to Jack. Thank you for watching. I will be back with more, and I will create a list of all of the Wegener stories, and thanks for being with me. Come for this vital orbit, which is the health stuff, and there's going to be all kinds of other orbits that I hope you join me. Thanks a lot. Talk to you next time. Bye.